ever get that feeling, like you want to build something really big, something lasting, not just leave it all up to chance?
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Yeah, we're taking a deep dive into this whole idea of getting rich without, well, getting lucky. It's based on Naval Ravikant's thinking.
Oh, yeah, Naval, quite the guy. Angelist opinions.
And an early investor in, like, Twitter and Uber, right?
Exactly. Huge successes. So when he talks about building wealth, well, people listen.
And his tweet storm on this, how to get rich without getting lucky, it really blew up.
It did, it did. And for good reason.
Hmm.
He lays out a really clear, actionable framework. It's not just some vague motivational stuff.
Right, right. And that's what we're going to unpack today in this deep dive. All the core ideas, like how he separates wealth, money, and status.
Yeah, that's fundamental.
And then how to actually create abundance, not just, chase after scraps.
And this whole thing about luck, right? What it really is, how much control we have over it.
Yeah. And the skills, the mindset, the long-term thinking that you really need to make this happen. We've gone through his talks, his writings, all that.
Yeah, synthesize it all down for you so you get the core insights nice and clear.
No fluff, just the good stuff, right?
Exactly. And look, let's be upfront. This isn't about some get-rich-quick scheme.
Right? No, not at all. It's about building something solid, ethically, over time.
It's about understanding these core principles that Naval talks about and then, applying them in your own life.
Having those aha moments, making those connections.
And walking away with some real actionable takeaways. That's the goal.
Okay, so let's get into it. One of the first things Naval does is he really separates these ideas of wealth, money, and status.
Yeah, he makes these distinctions right at the start because they're so easily confused.
So what's wealth then, in Naval's view, I mean?
He defines it as creating abundance, specifically building assets that, well, they earn for you, even when you're not actively working, like you're asleep and they still generate value.
Interesting. So it's not just about how much money you have in the bank right now.
No, it's about creating systems.
Yeah.
Right? Things that work for you, even when you're not directly involved.
So that's a big shift from just, like, trading your time for money.
Absolutely. And the thing is, this wealth creation, it's not a zero-sum game. Meaning, when someone creates wealth, it doesn't automatically mean someone else is losing out. You're expanding the pie, so to speak.
Okay, I get it. So wealth is about creating, not just taking.
Exactly. And money, in Naval's view, it's just a tool to exchange that wealth, like societal IOUs.
Okay, so you create something valuable, society gives you these IOUs.
And you can use those IOUs, that money, to get other things you need or want.
Right, but then there's status, right? How does that fit in?
This is where it gets interesting. Naval sees status as your position in a social hierarchy.
Like how high up you are on the ladder.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. Status games, they often are zero-sum.
So for someone to climb higher, someone else has to go down.
Often, yeah. And he points out this kind of inherent conflict, right? Sometimes the people creating wealth, the entrepreneurs, the innovators,
They get criticized, attacked even, by those who are really just focused on climbing that status ladder.
and often by putting others down. And it happens all the time, Like a public figure, they build a successful business.
And then they get slammed in the media, accused of all sorts of things.
Right. It's like some people see success as a threat, almost. Like it diminishes their own status.
So you have these two different mindsets, creating wealth, which can benefit everyone, and then this status game.
Which can get pretty ugly pretty fast.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand what's really motivating people, right? What game are they playing?
Makes sense. So if wealth is about creating, not taking, how does that actually play out in the real world?
Well, Naval argues that most of the wealth we see today, it came from creation, not just redistribution. Think about the big innovations like antibiotics, automobiles, the internet.
Those changed everything, right?
Yeah, completely transformed the world. And he makes this point that even someone today with a relatively modest income in a developed country.
They're living better than, like, royalty from a few hundred years ago.
Yeah, just imagine that. You have access to healthcare, information, all sorts of things that were unimaginable back then.
It's incredible when you think about it.
And Naval believes that almost anyone can create wealth, given the right education and the desire to learn, to build, to contribute.
Okay, so the opportunity is there. But he also mentions this danger of, like, having too many takers in a society and not enough makers, right?
Yeah, that's a big concern of his. It's about balance, right?
Yeah.
You need people creating, building, driving things forward.
Otherwise, the whole system can start to break down.
And to be clear, Naval's talking about ethical wealth creation, right? within a system of free minds and free markets.
Not monopolies, crony capitalism, all that.
Exactly. So we've got this idea of ethical wealth creation, making the pie bigger for everyone. But Naval specifically talks about doing this without getting lucky. What's that all about?
Yeah, how do you just, like, eliminate luck from the equation?
Well, he borrows this framework from Mark Andreessen, another very successful entrepreneur, and they talk about these 4 types of luck.
4 types. Okay, I'm listening.
So first you have just blind luck, pure chance, totally out of your control.
Right, like winning the lottery.
Exactly. Then there's luck that comes from hustling, from putting yourself out there, making things happen.
So the more you do, the more opportunities you encounter.
Exactly. It's like that saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
And then there's luck from preparedness, being ready when that opportunity comes knocking.
Chance favors the prepared mind, as they say. So those are the first 3.
Okay, what's the 4th one? This is the interesting one, right?
This is the one Naval calls deterministic luck. It's almost like luck becomes predictable based on who you are, how you operate in the world.
So your character, your reputation, they start to attract good fortune.
Exactly. Like you build yourself into the kind of person who good things just naturally happen to.
It's like, think about Warren Buffett. He gets offered these amazing investment deals, not just because he's smart, but because he's built this incredible reputation for integrity and long-term thinking.
Exactly. People trust him. And that trust, it translates into opportunity.
There's that great quote, too. I think it was Benjamin Disraeli, something like, "We make our fortunes and then call them fate."
So true. It's like we create our own luck through the choices we make, the actions we take day after day, and then when good things happen.
Yeah, just attribute it to luck.
Right.
But it's not just random, right?
Nope. And here's another interesting thing. Naval says that a bit of eccentricity can actually be a good thing.
Eccentricity, like being a little bit different.
Yeah. He says if everyone's looking in the same direction, following the same well-worn path.
It's harder to stand out, right? To find those hidden opportunities.
Exactly. It's the people who are a little bit different, who think outside the box, who are more likely to stumble upon something truly unique.
There's those great quotes about this, too, like Sam Altman saying, "Extreme people get extreme results."
And Jeffrey Pfeffer saying, you can't be normal and expect abnormal returns. You've got to be willing to be different.
Okay, so embrace your weirdness. Got it.
Embrace your weirdness.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's shift gears a bit. Naval's also pretty clear about what doesn't work when it comes to building wealth.
Yeah, and he's pretty blunt about this whole idea of just trading your time for money.
He says straight up, you're unlikely to get truly wealthy just by renting out your time.
Because you're limited by the number of hours in a day, right?
Exactly. It's a linear relationship. You work more, you earn more, but there's a ceiling.
You hit that limit, and that's it.
And he also points out that when you're mostly running out your time, you're kind of replaceable, right?
If someone can be trained to do what you do,
then someone else can always come along and do it for cheaper or faster or whatever.
and some jobs, they're just getting automated away, right? Robots, AI, all that.
So it's not a sustainable long-term strategy for building real wealth.
Okay, so if it's not about trading time for money, what is it about?
Ownership. Naval says true wealth comes from owning equity.
Equity, like owning a part of something.
Exactly. A stake in a business, a product, some kind of intellectual property.
So it's not just working for a company, it's owning a part of the company.
Right. That's where the real leverage is, because then your income, your wealth, it's not directly tied to how many hours you work.
He uses this example of like software engineers. One brilliant piece of code can create billions in value, right?
Well, someone else, they might be working really hard, but if their work isn't scalable.
They just can't have that same impact.
And this is where tools and leverage come in. Code, media, these are the tools of the modern age.
They let you amplify your efforts, reach way more people.
Which brings us to the internet, right? This huge game changer when it comes to wealth creation.
Yeah, the internet's connected everyone and everything.
And suddenly, it's possible to find an audience for, well, almost anything. No matter how niche, no matter how specific your skills are.
He talks about this guy, Illucertus, who makes these super detailed videos about historical fencing.
Like, that's pretty niche, right?
But on the internet, he can reach people all over the world who are passionate about that.
Exactly. And we've seen these whole new careers emerge. Esports players,
Yeah.
YouTubers,
Bloggers, podcasters, people building huge audiences online.
Joe Rogan, PewDiePie, they're reaching millions.
And Naval has this great phrase, escape competition through authenticity. I love that.
It's such a powerful idea. When you're competing directly, you're kind of playing someone else's game, right?
But everyone's unique, right?
You have your own experiences, your own perspective, your own way of doing things.
So by being authentically you, you kind of create your own space, your own market.
Where no one can really compete. And the internet gives you the platform to scale that.
Okay, so you found your niche, you're being authentic, you're building an audience, but then what?
Then it's all about time frame, right? And the people you choose to work with. Naval talks about playing long-term games with long-term people.
So you're not looking for quick wins, you're building something that lasts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where compound interest comes in. Not just with money, but with relationships, with knowledge.
It all builds up over time.
Like, he uses this analogy of the prisoner's dilemma, right?
Mm.
If you're interacting with someone repeatedly,
You're more likely to cooperate, to build trust.
because you know you'll see them again. But if it's just a one-off interaction,
You're more likely to, screw them over.
so it pays to build those long-term relationships in every area of your life.
And if you keep switching industries or circles, you have to start over, right? Rebuilding that trust.
It's like taking 2 steps back every time. So find your people, the ones who are in it for the long haul.
And he has this great way of putting it, right? It's the difference between baking a bigger pie together.
Versus just fighting over how to slice up the existing pie.
One is collaborative, the other is...
Competitive, even destructive.
And when it comes to choosing those partners, the people you're baking the pie with, Naval has a very specific framework.
Yeah, he looks for 3 things: intelligence, energy, and integrity.
And he says integrity is the most important.
Because without integrity, the intelligence and energy can actually be dangerous.
It's like someone could be really smart and driven, but if they're dishonest...
They'll just use those abilities to exploit others.
And he says true integrity, it's not about what people say, it's about what they do consistently.
Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. And who you don't want to partner with are cynics and pessimists.
He calls them idea killers.
Because they're always focused on the downside, the reasons why something won't work.
And that negativity can be contagious.
So surround yourself with people who are, well, not delusional.
But who are optimistic, who see the potential for positive change.
Okay, so you've got your long-term partners, you're building something meaningful, but what are you actually building it with?
This is where specific knowledge comes in.
Yeah.
It's a key part of Naval's framework.
And it's not just about getting a degree or a certification, right?
No, it's specific knowledge. It's something you can't easily learn from a textbook or a course.
It's more like specialized skills, unique insights, things you've picked up through experience, through passion, through curiosity.
If everyone could easily learn it, it wouldn't be that valuable.
Right. He gives this example of someone with a psychology degree who's also a natural salesperson.
The degree might enhance their existing skills, but it doesn't create that innate talent for sales.
And acquiring this specific knowledge often feels like play, right? Because you're so into it, it's fascinating to you.
But to someone else, it might look like a lot of hard work.
Naval tells the story about how his own mother recognized his business sense early on, even though he was talking about becoming an astrophysicist.
So she saw this specific knowledge he had, even when he didn't fully recognize it himself.
It's like that thing you're drawn to, that thing you're naturally good at, that might be your specific knowledge.
And often it's found at the cutting edge of things, where it's constantly evolving, always changing.
So how do you actually go about acquiring this specific knowledge?
It's not about formal education so much as apprenticeships, mentorships, hands-on experience.
Like Warren Buffett learning from Benjamin Graham.
Exactly. Or Scott Adams, who talks about becoming really good, like top 25%, at multiple things.
So you combine those skills and it creates something unique, something valuable.
And he talks about how in Silicon Valley you often see these partnerships, right?
Mm-hmm.
A brilliant builder paired with a charismatic seller.
Like Jobs and Wozniak, Gates and Allen.
One creates the product, the other gets it out into the world.
And both are essential, right?
Absolutely. So we're talking about specific knowledge, lifelong learning, but the foundation of all that is...
Reading. Naval is a huge advocate for reading.
He calls it the bedrock of learning. And his advice is simple. Read what you love until you love to read.
So start with whatever interests you, even if it's like comic books or whatever.
As long as you're reading, you're building that habit.
And then you can branch out, explore new things.
He also recommends reading those foundational books in a field, the classics.
So you understand the core ideas, the original thinking, not just the latest interpretations.
And he makes this great point. In today's world, access to information isn't the problem, it's the desire to learn.
So cultivate that desire, that curiosity.
And focus on those foundational principles.
Yeah.
Math, logic, the scientific method.
Those are the tools that help you separate fact from fiction.
He also recommends learning how to persuade people effectively, how to communicate your ideas.
And building a deep technical understanding of, well, whatever it is you're passionate about.
And he has this great saying, doing is faster than watching. So get out there and experiment. Learn by doing.
It's like you can read all about how to build a lemonade stand, but...
You'll learn a lot more by actually building one, making mistakes, figuring it out as you go.
Okay, so you're learning, you're building specific knowledge, but how do you amplify that, give it more impact?
This is where accountability comes in. And Naval talks about this a lot.
What does he mean by accountability?
Taking risks, putting your name on your work, your reputation on the line.
So it's not hiding behind anonymity, it's owning your actions, your creations.
And it can be scary, right? Because you're exposed. But it also builds credibility.
And credibility leads to leverage.
People are more likely to trust you, to invest in you, to support your work.
He points to figures like Kanye, Oprah, Trump, Elon.
Their names have become brands, right? Symbols of something.
And they built that by putting themselves out there, by being accountable.
And yeah, fame can be a double-edged sword, but...
It also gives you power, influence.
And Naval says, when you're accountable, you become less replaceable.
Because you're not just a cog in the machine, you're the one driving the machine.
And that makes you much more valuable, which means...
You have the potential to earn equity, to really share in the upside.
And he says that in our modern world, failure isn't as scary as it used to be.
Like, if you try something and it doesn't work out,
You can usually bounce back. Especially if you're honest, if you learn from your mistakes.
so don't be afraid to take risks, to put yourself out there.
Because the potential rewards can be huge. And accountability, it's really about having skin in the game, as Nassim Taleb says.
You're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk. You're invested in the outcome.
So we've got accountability, but that leads to leverage, right?
And leverage is what really amplifies your efforts.
But Naval makes a distinction between the old forms of leverage.
Like labor and capital.
Exactly.
That's-
Those have been around forever,
Okay.
but they can be limited, and they're super competitive.
Like everyone's trying to raise capital, hire the best people.
But the new forms of leverage, those are where the real excitement is.
What are those?
Product and media.
Okay, explain that.
Product, it's about creating things that are scalable, that don't require constant human input.
Like software, apps, online courses.
Exactly. And media, it's about reaching a large audience, spreading your ideas, your message.
Books, podcasts, videos, all that.
And the best part is, these new forms of leverage, they're permissionless.
Meaning, you don't need anyone's approval to get started, right?
Exactly. You don't need to pitch to a publisher or get funding from a VC.
You can just start creating, building your audience.
And he talks about the power of network effects, right?
Yeah.
Where the more people use something, the more valuable it becomes.
Like Facebook, Google, even language itself.
They all get more powerful as more people join the network.
And these network effects, they can lead to these natural monopolies, right?
Or one company or platform dominates a whole industry.
So that's something to keep in mind when you're building your own products and platforms.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked about specific knowledge, accountability, leverage.
But how do you actually use all that effectively?
That's where judgment comes in. And Naval says, in this age of infinite leverage, judgment is the most important skill.
Because anyone can get leverage, right? But using it wisely, making the right decisions.
That's what separates the winners from the losers.
Yeah. He often talks about Warren Buffett, who's made billions through his incredible judgment, his ability to see where the market's going.
And judgment, it comes from experience, from having skin in the game.
You can't just read about it in a book. You have to actually go out there and make decisions and...
See what happens. Learn from the outcomes.
And he says the people with the best judgment, they're often less emotional.
They can look at things objectively without getting caught up in the hype or the fear.
Like the best investors, they often think like philosophers, right?
They focus on those timeless principles, the fundamentals.
And they're not easily swayed by trends or fads.
And Naval's advice is, don't get caught up in outrage, in emotional reactivity.
Because that clouds your judgment, makes it harder to see things clearly.
Okay, so we've got judgment, but that needs to be applied to our most precious resource, time.
Time is the one thing you can't get more of, right?
Exactly. So Naval says, set a high aspirational hourly rate for yourself.
Like, how much would you need to be paid per hour to justify doing a certain task?
And if you can outsource that task for less than your aspirational rate,
Do it. Don't waste your time on things that someone else can do more efficiently. He even suggests starting with a rate that feels almost ridiculously high.
Because it forces you to really value your time.
And while hard work is important, Naval says what you work on and who you work with are even more important.
It's about working smart, not just hard.
And he describes effective work as a marathon of sprints.
So we have these bursts of intense effort followed by rest and recovery.
You can't just go full speed all the time, you'll burn out.
And he makes this great point that inspiration is perishable.
Meaning,
when you have a great idea, don't wait. Act on it.
because that initial excitement, that energy, it can fade.
And then you're left with this good intention that never gets realized.
So capture that inspiration when it strikes.
And then he has this great mantra, impatience with actions, patience with results.
So act quickly, but then be patient, let things play out.
And he also advises being too busy to do coffee.
I love that. It's like ruthlessly guarding your time and your attention.
Say no to those pointless meetings, those time-wasting activities.
Okay, so we're managing our time, we're working smart, but how do we stand out from the crowd?
This is where authenticity comes back in. Remember, escape competition through authenticity.
Be yourself. Find your unique niche.
Because if you're constantly competing, you're playing someone else's game.
And you're likely to lose.
But no one can compete with you on being you.
Like, think about Joe Rogan, Scott Adams. They've built these huge followings because they're so authentic, so themselves.
I mean, you still need to find product market fit, right? Make sure there's an audience for what you're offering.
But don't try to be someone you're not.
In fact, Naval says that in entrepreneurship, if you see a ton of competition in a certain area,
It might be a sign that you're on the wrong track.
because the masses are often wrong.
So trust your gut, follow your own path.
And he quotes Robert Frost, who talks about finding the intersection of your vocation and your avocation.
So the thing you're good at and the thing you love to do, those should align.
And over time, as you get better at being yourself, you attract the right people, the ones who complement your strengths.
Okay, so we're being authentic, we're building our specific knowledge, we're using leverage wisely. But what's the overall time frame for all of this?
This is where patience comes in. Naval says, eventually you will get what you deserve.
But it takes time, right?
Years, maybe even decades.
Hmm.
And the biggest mistake people make is trying to rush the process,
Like falling for those get-rich-quick schemes.
which almost always end badly. He says those schemes usually just benefit the schemer.
So be wary of anyone who's promising you easy money,
And he says, be careful about taking advice from people who got rich quickly.
because their path might be totally unique, not replicable.
It's like someone sharing their winning lottery numbers and saying, this is how you get rich.
It doesn't really work that way, does it?
Not really. So listen to everyone, but ultimately make up your own mind.
Build your own internal model of how the world works.
And Naval's ultimate advice, it's all summed up in this phrase: productize yourself.
What does that mean exactly?
It's about combining your unique skills, your leverage, your accountability, all into something that can be scaled, that can create value.
So you're not just selling your time, you're selling a product, a service, a brand, an idea.
And he even has this fun suggestion, right? Find 3 hobbies, one that can make you money, one that keeps you fit, and one that's just for creative expression.
That's a great framework. Now, a lot of people listening might be thinking, okay, all this sounds great, but I'm stuck in a job, I have bills to pay. How do I actually get started?
Naval acknowledges that, yeah, it can be tough to find the time and energy to build something on the side when you're already working full-time.
But he says even if you're renting your time right now, it's not a waste if you're learning, if you're saving, if you're building towards something bigger,
And he suggests looking for jobs in industries where there's an apprenticeship model.
where you're learning valuable skills that are hard to teach.
And no matter what job you have, he says, cultivate a founder mentality.
Take ownership of your work, care about the outcome, even if you're not the literal owner.
And you can start embracing accountability right now in any role.
Speak up, share your ideas, take responsibility.
And even if you're working a 9 to 5, you can still be building specific knowledge in your free time.
Learning new skills, creating things, putting yourself out there.
He tells this story about a factory worker who saw a problem with the company's fundraising efforts.
And he took it upon himself to figure out a solution.
And that led to a promotion, a new opportunity.
So don't just wait for permission, take initiative.
And he says the technology industry can be a great place to learn valuable skills because it's always changing, always evolving.
You have to stay ahead of the curve, which forces you to learn and adapt.
And he says, look for roles where your output is measurable, where you can see the impact of your work.
And if you're not getting that kind of feedback, if you're not feeling challenged,
Maybe it's time to look for a new opportunity.
he even draws a parallel to the mafia, how they used to have this apprenticeship model.
Like, becoming the Don's driver was actually a strategic move because you could learn the business from the inside.
So think about where you're positioned, what you're learning, who you're learning from.
So there you have it. We've gone through a lot, but hopefully you've gotten a good sense of Naval's framework for building wealth.
It's not about luck. It's about understanding the principles, putting in the work, and playing the long game.
Building specific knowledge, embracing accountability, finding the right leverage, and staying true to yourself.
So as you go about your week, I want you to think about this. Is there an area of your life where you're maybe playing a status game instead of focusing on creating real abundance?
What's one small shift you can make to redirect that energy, to start building wealth, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you?
And if you're really interested in this stuff, I highly recommend checking out Naval's original tweetstorm and all the other amazing things he's put out there.
It's a deep rabbit hole, but it's well worth exploring.
So until next time, keep learning, keep building, and keep creating.
And good luck out there.